One from Hawaii, Mr. Takai, who is the ranking member of the Contracting and Workforce Subcommittee, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Uh, Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for having this hearing. Really appreciate this. As someone who has had to change their credit card for each of the last 3 years, I think anything we can do to enhance protections and to prevent fraud is much appreciated. But I believe that as any transition, it's very tough. I have a few questions. I wanted to start with Ms. Roche regarding well, here's my question. The merchant community has strongly advocated for this move to the chip and PIN system here in the U.S. In fact, I may add, I was going to Japan and a few other countries for quite a while. My Visa card had the chip technology for maybe 3 years now, and I wasn't able to use it until just about 2 weeks ago here in the United States, in fact, in Hawaii. So as a credit union with many members going overseas, what has been your experience regarding the fraud rates on the PIN-enabled or the chip cards?
That's a difficult question to answer because the cards that we're issuing have the chip and a swipe on the back of it. So we have had to, because the cards are getting swiped in addition to being used as chips, we have had to reissue cards with chips that have had fraud committed on them. So our experience, it's very hard to segregate whether the fraud is coming from the chip read card or a swipe card.
So the merchants are going to push us now to, if they have it enabled, to use the chip.
Correct.
Instead of the swipe. They're going to ask us to do it, although we could do both, either.
A lot of it depends on how the readers are programmed, but in my experience in using the cards, if there is a chip in the card and the merchant has the chip reader enabled, it will force you to use the chip side.
Okay.
It forces it.
And you know what's surprising is I have a debit card too, and for the past year or so, some merchants don't require a PIN, so that was surprising. But on your credit cards, maybe your debit cards, you require a PIN. So are PIN numbers helpful? Do they prevent fraud? And then are they actually stored on the merchant's system?
So the PIN numbers are, what really matters, what's keeping the transaction secure is the chip. So the authentication method, whether it's PIN or signature, is not as important. And in fact, the PIN is, it's a static data element that can also be stolen. But what's most important is that the information on the chip is what's making it more secure, because that's a random number generated authentication method that changes every single time and cannot easily be counterfeited. That's what's the most important about this transition.
Okay, thanks. And then to Ms. Erickson, on your website, it states that you're rolling out the chip and choice to give merchants greater flexibility on their payment options. Mm-hmm. Do Visa rules allow merchants to require PINs on every debit transaction if that is the flexibility they prefer?
We support PIN as well as signature as well as no cardholder verification. So our rules provide flexibility for merchants and for issuers depending on the type of transaction that's being conducted. For example, transactions up to $25 do not require a signature or a PIN, and transactions up to $50 at grocery stores do not require a signature or a PIN either. So it gives the flexibility to the merchant depending on if they want to enable PIN or signature, or also be compliant with the rules and not require either signature or PIN for the transactions that qualify for that. We do know that roughly 50% of the merchant locations in the U.S., particularly small business merchants, don't have the incremental security technology that would secure and encrypt that PIN. So many small business merchants haven't opted to invest in PIN technology. But we do support that whether or not on the issuing side or on the merchant side they want to invest in supporting PIN or signature.
Who has the liability for debit cards? I mean, the debit charge transaction goes directly into my my checking account and pulls the money directly out. So right. Do I have liability, or do you
Consumers have zero liability for that. So from a Visa perspective, consumers have zero liability whether it's a credit card transaction or a debit card transaction.
When was the shift done to eliminate the 4-PIN requirement for debit cards?
I don't understand your question.
Debit cards required the PIN for many years until, like I said, just about a year ago, I was able to use my debit card without my PIN.
For many years, you've been able to use your Visa debit card as a signature card or without
Really?
a PIN for point of sale. Typically, if you're using it as a PIN, it's going over a different network that requires a PIN for that transaction, or to get cash back at the point of sale or at the ATM, for example. But using it as a Visa card at the point of sale, you've always been able to use it without a PIN.
Really? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. I yield back.